welcome back to the Tetracast, episode 218. Yeah, as of the time of this recording, it's September 4th, and here we are, already September. The year's just rolling by. I am your host, Josh Torres, once again. Brian is out this week, unavailable, and if all things go well, he should be back next week. So until then, you'll have to stick with me for just a little while longer. I'm sorry. But I'm not alone, thankfully. We have some folks here helping me out. Even though there's not a lot of new RPGs right now, we're going to make it through. Joining me this week is Adam Vitali.
Hello.
James Galizio.
Hey, folks.
Jess Reyes.
Nice to be back.
And Chow Min Woo.
Nice to be back.
I was not jumping in halfway through this time.
I know. He's here from the start. He's not a ninja anymore. Just like, hey guys, what's going on? I just got done at lunch. I'm like, all right, Chow. Hope you had a nice lunch. But yeah, here we are. We're in the week before Tales of Arise. A lot of RPG fans are eagerly awaiting that. But even if we might or may not have it at the moment, we still can't talk about it in the chance that we might have it. Who knows? But in the meantime, we'll talk about some of the games that we're playing besides the ones that we can't. Like, it's not just Tales of Arise, it's something else too. So, to kick things off, we have Jess here to not celebrate, but she got wind of it. We had news that Dark Deity is coming to Switch next year on Switch. And Jess, you were like, this looks really cool. This looks like an awesome Fire Emblem-like game. And did you receive code or did you buy it? I forgot.
Oh, I did get a code. So I actually got it a while ago when it first released for PC. But I'm only getting around to it now when the news came out. I was like, oh, it looked fun from the beginning, and I knew a couple of people who had played it, but it's popular enough that I guess they're porting it to Switch now.
Yeah, let me step back a second for those who aren't familiar. This was actually a bit of an interesting release because it's an indie Fire Emblem game. It's in the vein of like the GBA titles of Fire Emblem. It was announced at E3 and then shadow dropped like the day after. So it was the sort of thing where nobody knew it existed and then suddenly it was out. So no marketing or lead up to it. It just sort of dropped. And apparently it's, for any game like that, it's been doing pretty well and been received pretty well. Jess, just curious, have you played the GBA Fire Emblems or any of them?
I believe the earliest one that I played was Shadow Dragon on the DS.
So you haven't played a GBA Fire Emblem? I was just curious because that's clearly the games it's like emulating in terms of its visual style. I mean, it's obviously Fire Emblem have similarities throughout, but
It's funny. Like when Koga tried to make his own Fire Emblem, he got sued from Nintendo. And this time when Indies do it, I guess they're okay with it.
Wait, what happened to Vestaria Saga? I've actually been meaning to play that.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Wait, he got sued for that?
We were trying to start a lawsuit. I mean, it was Berwick Saga, I think it was.
Oh, I'm thinking of Vestaria Saga, which is...
Well, that was the sequel. I think that's the name of the sequel. I think.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that was a sequel to
I think that's when he got a new start.
Okay.
I don't know. Like there was a lawsuit going on when he left Nintendo when he started like his own Fire Emblem.
All right,
series.
Back to Dark Deity. So Jess, what is Dark Deity like?
Okay, so the main thing that's the same as Fire Emblem is the tactical chess-like gameplay, where everyone's their different classes like rogue and mage and knight and all that different stuff. So there's the damage predictions based on what kind of like who you're gonna attack, etc. But there's lots of the game makes a lot of the grindy stuff optional. So there's not a lot of side quests that you need to do to grind up levels, and then even the bonding episodes are optional. Also, there's no permadeath, so if your character dies in the middle of battle, they'll just come back the next time. But there is a stat punishment. So like if you let them die, then they might lose 2 of this one stat or something. So far, I'm chapter 8, and I've heard that there's 28 chapters altogether. So in the beginning, I felt a little bit compelled to just restart like I do with a Fire Emblem game. It's like, oh darn, that was stupid. I should have not let them die like that. Let me try again. But later on, I was like, I feel like maybe I don't care if they die. So I'm just gonna see what happens there. It was one of my trash units that died anyway, so I was like, well,
Dang,
Yeah.
trash
that wasn't gonna
units.
save him.
Oh my god.
Well,
Already
he's trash because he
discarded.
died.
No, it's like this guy. It's like, I mean, he looks like a cool character, but actually, like how some characters they have the high enough speed so that they could double someone even if they don't do that much damage, or they do a lot of damage, or maybe they're a healer. This guy, I feel like he doesn't have anything. Like I just have him there to fill in the gaps.
He has no utility.
He's a bench warmer.
I'm curious.
I mean, I feel
in Fire Emblem 7, which is Blazing Sword, which is the GBA one,
yes.
you go from chapter to chapter. So like it's a level to level based game, and you really cannot grind because there are no places to grind. You have literally a limited amount of chapters to play in, and whatever enemies are in those chapters is it. So does Dark Deity have like side like free battles or anything like that aren't chapters, but you can just battle just to grind if you wanted?
Like, does the Coliseum count in Fire Emblem?
Yeah, technically it does. But...
Okay, so what happens is that around chapter 3, you start having a camp. So basically, in between chapters, they'll be like, oh, we should like set up camp. And then that's when you could move around your inventory and buy more healing items, level up some of your weapons, and then do the bond episodes, which are optional. So those are the only part you can stay on so far that I've gotten to, at least. And then you can just choose to advance and go on to the next battle. No free battles or side quests, but
Okay.
I'm not sure if that comes later or something like that.
Yeah, I think you mentioned earlier that like you said like those there were like optional like grind missions. Are they like are those the ones segmented off? I misheard that earlier.
Oh, no, I was thinking like the last Fire Emblem game I played was Three Houses, and there would be quests that you could take on to level up before you go into the next mission if you feel under-leveled, but there's no such thing in this game.
Oh, okay. So it is pretty linear, like at where you're at, just like stage to stage to stage with like a little camp
Yes.
segment, but there's not like. Okay, got it.
Another big thing is so you get the weapons right in the beginning. So like each set of weapons is class locked. So for example, all knights have the same weapons. If you decide to level up your character into a knight, all their weapons suddenly change into swords, even if they had like bows before or something. And so you got multiple weapons to pick from the beginning. And when you reach level 10, it'll automatically ask you to choose a different class. So it's not like you need another item to do that like you do in Fire Emblem games.
Can you are there like branching class paths in terms of like if you have a mercenary or whatever class, can they turn in when they get the chance to change class? Can you choose which class they change into?
Yeah. So
Okay.
there's like the first level up. There's 4 to pick from, and then
Oh, okay. So
I don't know when the next level up will be, but there's another top part of the tree that you could choose from once they reach a high enough level. But I haven't gotten to yet.
The reason why I ask, and if you haven't played some of the earlier games, maybe you're just not aware, but obviously in later Fire Emblems like Three Houses, you can level and change class pretty freely. But in Fire Emblem, the titular Fire Emblem Blazing Sword on GBA, you go from one class to the next. There are no like you don't make a choice. Like mercenaries will always turn into heroes, for instance, or knights will always turn into generals. So I was just curious, how much is it emulating like that, being its GBA style, and how much is this game sort of pulling in from later Fire Emblems? So that's a lot of my questions are sort of leaning on that in terms of which elements from which Fire Emblem games is it sort of embracing, but it sounds like it has a pretty flexible class system. Is there weapon durability? So like you only can use your sword 30 times and it breaks?
It's unlimited, and then also your spell, so you could just like heal your characters whenever.
Okay.
Generous.
I find that kind of interesting because I remember when Fates was coming out, they got rid of weapon durability because and it sort of was like it almost felt like they were going to change things going forward. Like, we're no longer going to have weapon durability. We're going to have this new system. In Fates, it was sort of like I don't maybe remember the specific details, but you had like a charge meter on your weapon, and then when you use it enough, you can do like a special attack, and then you can charge it again. But there was no durability. But then they just got rid of that, and they brought back weapon durability for Three Houses. So who knows what the next Fire Emblem game will have? And I think Echoes also had weapon durability. So I was just curious. So it seems like Dark Deity does not.
Tell us, like, what's the story like in this game? What's going on?
So they're in a war against. So basically, there's, I guess, the first few main characters. They're basically teen soldiers. They're just like learning at an academy, and then suddenly, they find out, hey, it looks like the king is drafting literally everybody in this academy, and now you need to go off to war. So that's how everything starts off. And then, like, they start to, like, I guess they meet the other side, and then it turns out there's something going on with these special stones. Honestly, I haven't gotten that far yet, but like like there's a special stone that they're trying to get back that's kind of like a powerful family heirloom, and there's bad guys after it, like that kind of thing.
Do the characters seem likable?
They seem just about as likable as, like, I think a Fire Emblem character would be.
Okay.
So in the main story, how do you recruit characters? Do they like all start with you, or do you have a chance to, like, in battle, like, add someone to your team? Because recruitment, especially in earlier Fire Emblems, was a pretty big, component in terms of how you got new units.
So for the most part, they automatically join. There was one part, I think that was the most complex, where it's like you need to free hostages, and then you need to, like, go into these separate rooms and get them, get to have them join your party. Although I wonder, like, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not quite sure what would happen if you just decided not to save them. But a lot of the time you would just start a new chapter, and then there'd be this new person like, I'm joining your team, and then the characters would be like, all right, cool.
Sorry that I keep bringing up Fire Emblem, but even though this game is very, very clearly a Fire Emblem-like, like, that's clearly its
I mean, even the creator even admitted, like, hey, I really like these games. I wanted to make one like that. So it's
I actually have a note on that. But
I don't think there's any shame to do that, though.
So especially in, like, earlier Fire Emblems, the story, like the main plot line of these games, they really focused on a smaller set of characters, like 3 or 4 or 5 main characters. And then all the other characters you got, they really didn't, because of permadeath, those characters didn't actually interact in the main story much at all, because they may not be there. They might be dead, so they didn't, like, account for that. They decided to not have them participate. But they would, like, those other characters that you recruited and got and training and whatnot, they would have support conversations with each other. And that's sort of how you got into their personalities and stories and whatnot. So I was sort of curious in this game, if there is no permadeath, do all the characters, I assume there's a pretty large cast being a tactical game, do they seem to have pretty even, participation in the story, or does it focus on, like, a main trio?
I think the main people are the first few that you meet in the beginning of the story, like the ones in the promotional art. You can expect them to have the most screen time. Whenever one of the people you randomly picked up has a line, I'm just kind of like, all right, I guess it's time for you to get, like, one line of screen time. Then it's other side characters' time to get, like, one line.
Okay.
So,
well, that's actually one thing about Three Houses that's interesting, is that that's the only game in the series where you pretty much start with pretty much the full cast. I know some units come in a little bit later, so it feels a bit more even in terms of, obviously it's got the main 3 lords, but in terms of, there is no recruitment really, not too much in that game. So with Three Houses being such a huge game, there was an interview with the person who created this game, and it seems like he wanted to do a slightly more focused, slightly more classic style of Fire Emblem with this, the GBA stylings of the visuals, and maybe a bit more focused in terms of the combat and the chapter progression and things like that. One thing that was also sort of interesting in this interview that he did, I believe it was with Siliconera, was that this game was apparently in development for about 2 years or something like that. For an indie game, which oftentimes have like really extended developments for obvious reasons, this game kind of seems like it turned around its development pretty readily, which is kind of surprising.
I'd say it makes sense that if you said that the gameplay was the main focus in terms of combat, I felt like that was the most engaging part. I feel like I haven't gone far enough to like really judge the story too hard.
Mm-hmm.
So far, it's the typical thing where it's like I feel like it's definitely not as complex as Three Houses, but that's kind of a high bar. The characters are enjoyable enough. When I'm comparing it to Three Houses, it's like those characters where like they're not necessarily driving factors of the plot, but it just makes sense that like, they all make sense as like just a person living in the world that was built.
Yeah, I get
But
you.
this story, like I guess like I haven't found out much about the world yet because like there's not as much exposition drop. You just learn new things as you go. Like for example, learning that there's like like one of those lower classes of people called adept, and then there's like learning about different kinds of towns that are like poorer than others. So that's something you kind of learn as the story goes on, and there's less of an exposition dump.
I'm
in the
sure there's
beginning, so-
several twists you haven't run into yet. You're only like 8 out of
Yeah,
28
yeah.
chapters, so mhm.
Yeah, so it's like I still got a lot to learn, so it's a little early to judge story, but I'm having fun. I really do enjoy the gameplay, and I like that they made a lot of the things optional, like the bonding episodes I can go back for because they're not tied to any stats, so you can just do them for fun when you want.
Oh, okay, cool. I'm curious. That now that you've had some time with this game, like when it comes to like UI and the HUD and whatnot, do you think they'd be able to like adapt that for the Switch, like just like 1-to-1? Hey, just put it on the Switch and it'll work fine. Or do you think they would have to like adapt like the UI or the HUD for the Switch, like to accommodate for like the smaller handheld screen? Are there any worries that like maybe the font size might be too small if they don't like big adjustments to it?
So I feel like it's a like it, I feel like it seems like it'll translate to Switch pretty well, just because the maps, like even on my computer, they are pretty large, but you can just like move up and down. It really is like imagine like it's very very similar to how Fire Emblem works, how the grid structure and maps work. So I don't think it'd be too difficult to move along like that. And then the text seems like a normal size on my computer at least. I can't imagine that they would make it like absurdly small. So
Okay, yeah. All right, that seems like you're all good on Dark Deity. Yeah, you got it all out.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, you're not done because you're like I'm ready to go this week, and you tried out that new Genshin Impact update. You and Chao, and then you're like I haven't. You told me I haven't even done the story quest. All I've been doing is fishing. And you know what? That's the life right there. That seems to be the biggest improvement the game has made since launch.
Yeah,
But,
I went pretty hardcore on fishing.
All right, Jess and Chow, tell me about fishing in Genshin Impact.
Okay, well, for me at first it's like when they first announced it, we were still kind of figuring how it would work. So basically, the second you go to like collect daily awards or whatever, they're like, "Hey, the fishing association is in town. Go check that out." So then it starts like this mini quest to learn how to fish, and then from there on, you could create your bait from the alchemy table and find different fishing spots throughout the region. So it's like you can only fish in certain areas in Mondstadt, Liyue, and Inazuma. And then all the other parts, you could just, jump into the lake and casually swim after fish like you've been doing the entire time.
Okay, so when it comes to like making bait through alchemy, I'm assuming there's like this whole tier system, like only this type of bait only attracts this type of fish, and then I'm gonna assume that better bait equals better types of fish that you're able to catch. Is that how it works?
I wouldn't say better type of fish, just different types. Because right now there's a weapon that you could redeem from one of the fishing associations, and that weapon is perfect for Shogun as a free-to-play player. You don't want to fork out like half $5,000 for the current banner weapon or something like that. So everyone's
is that like a true to life story, Chow? How much did you go for Raiden, both
no,
the character and the weapon?
I didn't go that hard.
Okay.
I did get her to C2, but
Mm-hmm.
I still had to buy a pack of there.
Mm-hmm. And I remember that with at least the Raiden one, they refreshed the first purchase bonuses for the gems, paid
Yeah,
gems.
it was their anniversary. I think everyone in China is kind of mad, saying that the anniversary reward was really stingy because they were giving the free rolls after the Shogun banner's over.
Well, of course they are.
Right?
Okay, so is there like anything besides the fishing? Did they add with this new update? Like you had Raiden, you had fishing. Was there like any like new activities besides that?
There's 2 new islands. So there is one island to the southeast of Inazuma, and there's one island to the west of Inazuma. What happens right now is the west island feels kind of like incomplete.
Okay.
I think what's wrong with this current patch is more like the story. It's kind of rushed. If anyone played it, they'll be like, "Oh, it's like where's the build-up? It's just suddenly over," kind of thing.
Oh.
Oh, you bummed out Jazz. She didn't get to it.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it for Jess. But,
Yeah.
I think Shogun's character is very interesting. Actually, like it reveals her backstory this patch, but like what they did with the villain, the Signoria, is kind of.
Oh. So with the fishing, like when you're actually doing the mini game, is it a very complicated mini game? Like what you're actually doing is like Sega bass fishing, where you're kind of adjusting the arc of like your throw, and then kind of having to like like wrestle with the fish after you catch it, like kind of near style. You have to go in the directly opposite direction of where it's going or whatnot. I forgot how the near one works, but how is that end of it?
Oh, well, on the computer, at least, I just did. So basically, you can like just adjust where you throw it with your like point and click. And then when the fish latches on, you could press left click. And then there's a certain bar, and you need to keep the button down and like follow the bar wherever it goes. Like it'll go down, and then like you need to let go or hold on depending on where you want where you want it to land, so that you keep what do you call it, like there's the pointer within the bar, so it's like just making sure like you have the right amount of pressure for the rod at all times, and you control it with your left clicker.
So there's like a bit of like skill associated with fishing. It's not just like a simple. It's not like in say Trails, for example, like in the Trails in the Sky, where you put you throw the rod into the water, the line, and you see the exclamation point. You click a button, and it's like, okay, you got a fish. So it seems to be more, in depth.
Yeah, it's a little bit more of an extended process, but on the bright side, the click is more forgiving. So like if you don't press it like within 2 seconds, it's not like the fish will leave and then you can't have it anymore. There's actually a set amount of fish in the one fishing area per day. So like for example, in Animal Crossing, if you pull too early, then you don't get the fish.
Right.
Or like for example, if you throw too close, you could scare it away. But here it's like it'll stay there. You just need to try again.
Is that part of your dailies now then? Where like every day like fish will like reset in a certain region and then it's like, okay, I'll get my fish for the day.
They spawn like in 2 days. So what happens is that if you run out of fishes, you try to hop in a friend's world and steal their fishes.
Oh, right. I forgot Genshin had this meta of like you have to like hop into other people's worlds. So not only for fish, for fish now, but back then when I was playing, you would hop into other people's worlds to like get like materials from the world after you exhausted your own and you don't want to wait. It's like just let me hop into your world and I want to go gather and then go on to the next world.
Like, chill, dude. I'm not stealing your wallet.
That's yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything else besides the ride-in weapon that you can get with the fish? Is there any more tangible benefits or rewards?
Let's see. What was there? There was fish bait recipes. I think there's other things too.
But you're exchanging the fish themselves, right? You're not like turning the fish into other materials or whatnot for trading. It's like you actually just trade in the fish
Yeah,
themselves.
you just train the fish themselves. But the
Okay.
weapon is
But like
the biggest catch. Well, the
I
weapon
guess I
actually
should
called the
also
catch.
I guess I should specify also like there's fish that you could just use as food, but also ornamental fish, which
Mhm.
are the kind that you exchange, but also you could just but also there's some that you could just put in your teapot house.
Oh, like as decoration?
Yeah, just like you remember the koi pond thing that we were talking about. So there's a
Okay.
certain item that you could build and put it in your teapot, and then throw some of your favorite fish in there.
Does it have that thing where when you cook in that game, certain characters will be like more attuned to certain recipes? Is that the same way with fishing here, where certain characters will be better at with a certain fishing rod or anything like that?
Whenever you fish, it defaults to the main character. Like even if you like, for example, if I'm using catching or fishel, like whenever you start fishing, it'll just change the main character right then and there, and
Okay.
it'll look like him fishing.
Okay. Anything else about this Genshin Impact patch that any of you want to mention at the moment?
Oh, one of the things I thought was funny was on the quest, it
Hmm.
tells you the guy's like, "So you know how to fish?" And then the English text is like, "Oh, I could just like grab it with my hands." Like as a joke, it's like you jump in and you swim after fish until like because
Yeah.
that's what you did until the fishing came up.
Right.
But yeah,
Well,
that's all.
when's the next I guess patch coming for Genshin Impact to kind of round out this content drop? Because
Probably in about a month and a half. But I
oh
also forgot to mention, we also forgot about Alloy from
oh yeah,
Horizon
Oh
Zero Dawn.
yeah.
that's right. Did you both get her?
You could get her
Um,
right now, but it's like I don't really care about her, so it's like I'm just gonna stick with my characters right now. But you could get her right now if you just log into your PlayStation platform and it'll be on your mailbox.
they're just like alloy, nuh-uh. Sword booba lady, uh-huh.
It really makes you think about this Chow guy.
Man,
How's have you heard anything about Alloy in terms of like how good she is? What are her skills
honestly,
like?
I rarely hear anyone talking about her. I think she's
I
technically
mean,
like a 4-star character, but slightly better. But given that she's free, she won't be like gonna be meta
I thought
changing, right?
isn't she only available for PlayStation originally, and then she's coming to PC and or
She'll
something?
come to everybody for free
Yeah,
in the next version. So that's what I heard.
yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm just like, maybe that's why it's not as popular right now.
because
So
really,
I'll just wait.
who's playing Genshin on a PlayStation platform, right?
As some people do.
I know.
Some
There's
people.
probably a good like a big base. That's gonna be man. I always feel weird mentioning this, like especially like when Adam and I talk about it. It's like, how is Alloy gonna be compatible with the Switch version, mythical Switch version that's coming one day? Because it's so weird that we're this far into Genshin Impact's lifespan, and they still really haven't acknowledged that like they announced the Switch version. It's just they they never mentioned it again after like that January 2020, I think,
We
announcement.
It was just literally a tweet, and we've said this in a podcast
Yeah.
before. But
Was it
even when
that long?
Yes.
we get press releases from MiHoYo on the game, and they all press releases have like boilerplate stuff where they say Genshin Impact is an open world action adventure RPG whatever blah 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 for PlayStation, PC, and mobile devices. Like they will not mention Switch at all. Like they pretend it doesn't exist. It almost feels like so. Who knows?
They were struggling with the hardware. Maybe when there's a Switch Pro, then maybe we'll see Genshin Impact then.
What is going on in that version?
I don't know. And then it's like, do you know if crossplay is available from Switch? I don't know. I feel like console and PC crossplay always gets kind of wonky.
Some Switch games have crossplay, so
Okay, maybe that's
Yeah, it's like Rocket League and like Fortnite and big games like that. Yeah, but then you have like the weirder situations where you have like cross save, like Witcher 3 also and Civ. So it's
80s.
just
okay.
80s.
Oh yeah, yeah.
All right, so that's it for Genshin Impact at the moment. Always a developing story. We'll see it again at TGS, which is like at the end of this month, late and then early into October. Kind of bleeds into there. Um, I guess I'll talk about just a little game I've been checking out. This came out earlier this week on Steam. It's like a solo dev indie passion project type deal. It's called Mecha Knight's Nightmare. It's one of those just games like, hey, I see a mech, I'm gonna go buy it and check this out because there's not enough mech games these days. It's a really really cool game if you just go into it with knowing the context. It's like, hey, this is by a solo developer. It's a passion project. It's okay. It's decent for what it is. You're basically piloting this mech, and it's during this second Cold War, and something goes awry as like you're invading enemy territory or RI, and like these like alien life forms, unidentified life forms, kind of start attacking you. And it for people who've played Muv-Luv or Muv Alternative, it definitely kind of riffs on those type of vibes where you're piloting this badass robot against this overwhelming horde of enemies, like just dozens upon dozens of screen at once. And a lot of your missions at the moment, like I'm like maybe 7 to 8 missions in, and I think there's maybe over 20, I think. But the objective is to like, hey, just survive, hold out, type of deal. There is some mission variety, like where there's like this like certain enemy types, like artillery enemy types, where you have to like take like take down squads of them and then retreat because like after you took them out, a lot of other enemies started pouring. It's like, hey, you gotta evacuate, you gotta get out of here. So
So is it like a mission-based game?
yeah, it's a stage-based, mission-based game. And then as you're going through these levels, these stages, there'll be like drops. Like there'll be like refill your ammo, refill your health. Sometimes you'll get like new parts throughout them. So like you can have like different mech heads, mech torsos, arms, legs, all that. And then as you equip new ones, you'll see like very detailed like meters and stats down at the bottom and say, okay, like if you equip this head, like your radar range will be expanded. If you equip this torso, it'll put amount of this load and weight on your robot. And there's only a certain amount that you can like support depending on like what kind of legs you have. So you might pick up legs that are like, hey, you can accommodate for like a lot more load on your robot because there's like a heavier these heavier legs, but as a result, your walk speed may go down and whatnot. You also get cash in this game, either like as drops or by completing a mission, and then you use those to like upgrade like other like stats on the side. So like upgrade like your armor limit, upgrade your energy limit, upgrade your energy charge rate, and then it'll go like into like even minute stuff like upgrade like your recoil, like your kickback, so like uh you're not pushed back so often, or like whenever you pull the trigger on a gun, your reticle won't be flying all over the place, that type of stuff. And you can unlock like new slots on like active and passive modules that can help you out. Like passive modules will give you like additional stats like more energy or more armor, and active modules are stuff like you can actually activate on the field. So like a supply drop, or um, boost my booster speed by 30% for this amount of seconds and whatnot.
I was
And
actually looking at a video for this, and this game really, I know you said it, but it really, really looks like Armored Core.
yes, it
Like
looks, yeah, definitely.
even just like this is just such a simple thing, but this in this video, like the player robot or mech shifting left and right, it looks like identical to what an Armored Core game would look like. And a lot of the stuff you mentioned is also similar to Armored Core in terms of like the different parts and the different like weight on the legs and
Yeah.
whatnot. What you're talking about like passive stats and things like that and upgrading, that seems a little bit different, but
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it definitely seems like kind of maybe in the similar vein to Dark Deity, where some indie developers like they're not making games like this anymore, so I'm gonna make it myself. It feels like this person is like Armored Core 5 is like 10 years old now, so I'm gonna make my own Armored Core style of game.
Fair.
So
yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with you, developer.
yeah.
But yeah, and you know, just like an Armored Core, like you can have different weapons for each arm. So you can have like a Gatling gun and a shotgun on different arms, or go dual Gatling guns, or an assault rifle and a machine gun on each arm. And then you have like shoulder attachment that can have like missiles or rocket launchers, or like just really big as the like machine assault rifles on there to kind of bolster it out. And you have to also make sure that like you're not firing off too much like consecutively, because as you're firing off both shoulder and arm weapons, they accumulate heat, and if you fire off too much, they'll overheat, and then you have to wait for them to cool down until you can like start shooting them again. So you have to kind of manage that. And also it's interesting because like even though it looks like Armored Core, it doesn't really move or operate like Armored Core, in the sense that like people who got into Armored Core in the PS3 era with 4 and 4 Answer, that's like one of the most popular Armored Cores to the mainstream. It's not as like constantly fast as that. Yes, you have a boost, but it's on a very constrained energy resource, which is like in the Armored Core games, you can like kind of make it so you can like infinitely boost and overboost and whatnot. And in this game, I don't think you can have it like as an infinite resource. You can definitely upgrade it a lot, but I don't think you can like constantly be doing that without like without having to like take a break and like make sure that you're not using it. Because like when you go into it, you go into your booster mode, and then in this booster mode, it'll constantly drain your energy, and then as like you saw in that trailer, Adam, like when you sway sideways or back and forth, it'll consume additional energy on top of the energy that's already being drained on that. So for how I use it more as like correcting like movement and position, just making sure I'm not in a bad spot while a lot of like enemies like surround me and whatnot. And like I'm not kidding you, like there are literally like maybe like 50 to 80, maybe over 100 enemies on screen at once, like at any given time. Sometimes even a bit more, like more open battlefields. It's like it gets really overwhelming, but like in a really good way. Like you have that sense of like feeling of empowerment of like, yeah, I'm the thing that I'm like um piloting is like unstoppable, and it's like it's really cool. I'm really impressed with just this as a solo indie project. It's quite a neat game. It's not being sold at full price. It's like $16 or $18 just MSRP. So if you're kind of getting an itch for a mech game at the moment and nothing's really delivering at the moment, maybe go check it out. I will say, since this is still like a fairly like a small scope game, like this have like the best production values in sense of like it doesn't like look amazing, it looks decent. And like when it comes to like voice acting in the story, when like getting chatter over your radio and whatnot, it's like the voice acting isn't amazing. It is funny, probably unintentionally funny. I don't know what they were going for, but it is. Some of the dialogue delivery in this game is a lot. But yeah, it's that's what I've been checking out that I can talk about at the moment. And then the other thing I've been working on is, we'll see when we can talk about it. James, you've been putting a lot of time into Trails into Reverie.
Well, let's be clear here. It's I've been putting a lot of time into Hajimari no Kiseki. We didn't somehow time travel 2 years into the future and get an early copy of
that's
the localization.
That's the officially localized name. So I'm going to the officially localized name now that they've unveiled it.
Yeah, I'm just specifying the Japanese title because that is the version I'm playing.
Yes.
But so yeah, I've been playing it more. I'm getting to the point where I really can't talk too much about it because spoilers. Though I'd imagine a lot of people that have been following the series have probably been spoiled on a few things, especially if you watched that anniversary concert where the localization got announced. Thanks, Falcom. I have to say I've been enjoying it quite a bit. And I'm glad. I'm really glad that's the case because obviously I don't even have to say it. I had my issues with Cold Steel 4. Part of it was the localization being a bit messy, though that's been fixed up. But a, a big portion of it had to do with the actual structure of the game and how messy the story was as a whole. Whether it was the pacing, the way that the curse was kind of just all over the place. Over time, especially as I've been going through Hajimari, I feel like I can kind of see what they really meant Cold Steel 4 to be. But that ultimately doesn't change my feelings on the game itself because, like, even though I can tell, oh, this is what they really meant to do, the game we got is the game we got. And
Yeah.
the game itself is still incredibly flawed. Not going to say anyone's wrong for liking it. Obviously, I'm in the minority, at least as far as the Western fan base is concerned. But Hajimari, I'm enjoying it quite a bit. The pacing's a lot better. I tweeted out something yesterday about basically there was a section where a bunch of characters was like, "Oh, we need to teleport to a specific location with the septium veins, through the septium veins and whatnot." And in Cold Steel 4, they would say, "Oh, well, we need to prepare." And then they would spend like 30 minutes showing how each group was preparing to teleport before they actually teleport, even though that doesn't really add anything to it. And Hajimari, I was expecting that to happen because I've been conditioned by Falcom to expect everything to take a time and a half, even when not necessary. But instead, it just was like, okay, well, my group needs to do some things. This group needs to do some things. Does tomorrow at noon sound good? And then literally the very next scene is they've teleported. And if you're a Trails fan, if you've played enough of the series, what I just said there is legitimately mind-blowing.
Revelation.
It really feels
shouldn't
like
be.
3 and 4 especially, but you can maybe argue another like Cold Steel 1 and 2 as well. The fact that it was sort of split into 2 games, they kind of had to, or felt the need to, add that sort of padding in places where it's like we could add, a few hours of gameplay and kind of fillerish stuff in this moment of the story right here, and it really just drags everything down. Where Hajimari, it feels like they're like, we don't need to do that. So,
yeah, the overall structure of the game definitely benefits from the cross story system because everything's more focused. Because in other Trails games, obviously, if they want several like groups to be doing something at the same time, it has to cut around at the game's pace for when you're going to see something. And the way the cross story system works is that you're controlling that pacing. And probably because the game and Falcom knows that, it doesn't waste time because any exposition is just going to be in each route. And they can avoid saying things in, let's say, Lloyd's route if if the information that you would need later is in C's route or Reen's route. And basically the amount of information is the same, but because the game is specifically set up with 3 different routes at the same time, it's almost like they've been holding back information because they know that that information is going to come in the other routes and they don't need to reiterate, and it doesn't mess with the pacing as much. That's the read I'm getting. That also probably means that it won't necessarily be fixed in Kuro, though thinking about it, maybe the alignment system means that they'll leave some information out of one alignment route to another, hopefully.
I actually forgot that Kuro had an alignment system. That's going to be something, huh?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, but been enjoying it quite a bit. The story is actually a lot better than I think people gave it credit for. One thing that I remembered reading before even playing it is that a lot of people said that the story beats didn't make sense or they felt like they came out of left field. But in context, most of the story is actually pretty straightforward and makes sense. Like even some of the wackier stuff that happens in Hajimari, like when you're actually playing the game and you're understanding what's going on, it makes a lot of sense and it's straightforward.
I feel
Kind
like
of weird that like games seem to be better if you can understand them, huh?
Yeah,
Yep.
I feel like broadly, not even talking about Kiseki series, but just broadly, sometimes you'll get a group of people who will look at the quote spoilers, and this is literally like a bullet point list or something, like this happens at some point, and then this happens at some point, and it might not even be full sentences, and then people who haven't played the game or watched the show or whatever it is, they'll just see like these like really quick facts about what happens and be like, that doesn't make sense, or this is stupid, but without like any of the context or build up or anything with it. So
the funny thing about that is like those like sentiments are like, for some people are that's like their eternal sentiment to it, and anything that like gets thrown their way to disprove that, they'll like twist that to like fit their narrative too.
That is what you call a process argument. And once you start looking for process arguments where people know the answer or know the argument they want to make and will bend the evidence to support it, you'll see it everywhere.
There's definitely been some people that I saw talking about Hajimari that were doing that. Or I guess to put it another way, they had major bitch eating crackers syndrome, where it's like they didn't like Cold Steel 4 for legitimate reasons, and so they're so caught in their own like feedback loop of being pissed at the series that they kind of just weren't able to go into Hajimari with a cool mind, or they didn't even play the game, so they're basing their outrage off of stuff that they're seeing out of context. And another thing that I do want to mention that's not a spoiler is that the presentation I mentioned last time, that I felt like that the better animations were kind of cool, but they weren't as much of a big deal as they made it out to be. That's true, but it's not just the animations that have been improved. The overall cutscenes themselves and like the way that the camera is used in Hajimari is way more dynamic than it was in Cold Steel 3 and 4. Like there's actual like somewhat cinematography with how they want to showcase things, and it's really good because that means that these scenes are more engaging, and it also keeps you it's refreshing after all of the text. So you have the better pacing in the text, you've got better cutscene direction with some really interesting scenes. Like one of the scenes I just saw in the last section I played at the end of Reen's chapter 4 route was really cool with some of the stuff they pulled off there.
You mean the camera isn't just like pulled back to show like all 30 people in a room and slowly scanning over them as they talk? You mean
that still happens? Yeah, it still happens sometimes, but there's when the camera, when they actually want to showcase something like in movement, an actual cutscene that's not just talking, it really does make the scenes feel a lot better, and it makes me feel better. It makes me feel more hopeful for Kuro's cutscenes and how they're going to handle things with stuff like that. So overall, I've been pleasantly surprised. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. I'm not sure if we're going to do an actual import review because, well, I'm going to have to talk with Alex about that, see what he wants us to do. But definitely, probably in the next week or so, like look forward to my final impressions, something like that.
Also, Kuro's coming out like in what, 4 weeks? End of the month, huh?
Yeah. Yep. 3.5 weeks, and I'm gonna actually be ready to hop right in.
Gonna be very interesting to see how that holds up. So, any final thoughts on Hajimari for now?
Basically, even if you didn't like Cold Steel 4, go into Hajimari with an open mind, because even if you look at screenshots and the spreadsheet, you're going to think that it's not that different from Cold Steel 3 and 4, and you're going to fall into the trap that, oh no, it's just Cold Steel 5. It's not. When they said that it was more like the third, they were right. It's not the exact same thing, but Hajimari is very much its own can of worms, and well, I'm sure there will probably be some people, some weirdos that like it less than Cold Steel 4. I really enjoy it. I really enjoyed it so far.
I know
it's
some
okay,
people,
man.
Well, I'm of two minds of this. Like some people that just seem to maybe take the position that if they like the Trails series, they have to like all of it unconditionally, and just like no matter what, they like if for some reason they're like if some entry is worse than another, it feels like almost a betrayal or what have you. So I actually, appreciate maybe a little bit more of a level take in terms of, what, not all entries are the same. But I also know some people who are like, I don't really like Trails in the Sky the Third. I'm like, what is wrong with you? That is like clearly the best one.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I mean, hey, maybe time heals all wounds, and everyone's wounds will heal by 2023, the Western release.
I'm so sorry, guys. This is people listening. They're Trails fans. I'm so sorry that I had to be the bearer of bad news that the 2023 release of Trails and Reverie is something you should be looking forward to.
All right, Adam, you've been checking out this Assassin's Creed Valhalla, The Siege of Paris, the DLC.
Yeah, so I won't take too long on this at all, but when I reviewed Assassin's Creed Valhalla earlier this year, I hadn't played any of the RPG like turned Assassin's Creed games, which are Origin, Odyssey, and Valhalla, and I had played some of the earlier ones like the Ezio trilogy, and I just sort of decided, you know what, I've missed like 7 entries. Let me just jump in and see what it's all about now. And I kind of came away a bit lukewarm. I don't dislike the game. It's just sort of like maybe this isn't the sort of game I care for a lot. Now, the way Valhalla is structured as a story, it is actually a bit segmented where you go to different regions of England and you're basically each region sort of has its own self-contained story that takes place, and effectively what you're doing is you are Ivor and you are or Eivor, and you are recruiting these different kingdoms and like forming an alliance. So each kingdom has its own story. Now, I bring that up because the DLCs in Assassin's Creed Valhalla they really just feel like more of that, more of the same. The first DLC was Wrath of the Druid, where you go to Ireland and you basically have a kingdom there and its own self-contained story. So it's basically just another one, if that makes sense. It's maybe a little bit more involved and the map's a bit bigger, of course, but it really is just another self-contained story that ultimately ends up with another kingdom being allied to you. And Siege of Paris. Sorry?
Do they introduce like any new gameplay systems, or like any new weapons, or anything like that?
Slightly. But Siege of Paris is sort of similar. You go to Paris, and there's another self-contained story there. Again, the DLC stories are a bit more involved, of course, than like just the regions in the main game, but it kind of ultimately has the same sort of feel to it. In Siege of Paris, in terms of its gameplay, it's mostly the same. It does add one-handed swords, which, believe it or not, you could not just wield a one-handed sword in Valhalla before.
I forgot you couldn't. Yeah.
I think they had just like great swords, or something. I to be honest, at this point, I have spoilers. I have Thor's hammer. I'm like, I'm not gonna get rid of Thor's hammer. Sorry. By the way, if you didn't realize, Assassin's Creed game has a lot of weird like god and mythical stuff in it. But anyways, one thing that they added in Siege of Paris is, who here has played the original Assassin's Creed, the very first one?
I have. Me.
You have? I have.
The one in Jerusalem, right?
Yes. And you remember the original Assassin's Creed game? You had these assassination like targets, and what you would do before you actually did the assassination mission is you would do like these sort of side events that might open up like a different path or a different route.
You had to learn about your assassinations first before going into it. You had to scope them out. Actually.
And that's a sort of structure that was dropped quickly in the series, and I've skipped several entries, but I don't know if it's ever made a return in any way. Siege of Paris sort of brings that back in a way. There's 3 different cases where you have to assassinate a target, and the game is actually pretty explicit about it. It's like you can either work with these, like do some social, what do they call it, like social stealth with the peasants or whatnot, and approach this like festival that this person's going to be in for your assassination that way, or you could maybe just climb some buildings and do a little bit of like platforming almost, or parkour or whatever, to like get to the point on some sort of ledge or roof where you can do the assassination, or find this like hidden underground route to get there. So it seems like there's a little bit of an emulation of these sort of assassination missions where it's like you can approach it in any way you want.
To be honest, I kind of missed that part about like Assassin's Creed in general. Like, it was like one of the cool things about it. The first Assassin's Creed, it's like, oh, you actually have to like think about how you want to like do these assassination missions, because after you assassinate that person, you're gonna get chased the fuck out of you.
And the first Assassin's Creed was hard in places too. Like in terms of checkpoints, like if you got found or killed because like you were kind of a wimp, to be honest. Besides assassinations, it wasn't like Valhalla where it's pretty much just an action RPG. It's like no, you had to stay stealthy. But in Siege of Paris, my character is kind of ridiculously strong at this point, and I'm over leveled. Like these DLCs, you're not meant to be end game level, and I just brute forced everything. Like I'm just gonna walk through the front doors and just pound away. So I just did that.
You have no reason to. Yeah, you have no reason to be stealthy when you have Thor's hammer. It
but-
is really funny that like just the thought, like the concept of like this game that already has like a lot of like sword weapon types. It's like, yeah, we're bringing one-handed swords as DLC. It's like, and that's like usually the basic weapon like in any
Right.
types of these games. So just like
it did also add sights, so you can have a sight.
ooh,
Yeah.
all right.
So those are pretty cool.
Okay.
I mean, I used
Yeah,
one very briefly because a quest required me to, but yeah. Overall, in terms of these Assassin's Creed Valhalla DLCs, I wouldn't say they're like fantastic enough to. If you've played Valhalla and you're done with it and you don't want to return to it, it's like it's not good enough to be like you need to boot up your game again. But if you like the game and you just wanted to like dive in and just wanted more content to play through, it's pretty much just exactly that. So that's what it is. Now, there were rumors that they were going to add like a third DLC pack because Valhalla is, I believe, the most successful Assassin's Creed game they've ever made in terms of sales. To be clear, that may not be like unit sales, but that game has a lot of microtransactions. So who knows? But there were rumors that they were going to do a third DLC pack, but they haven't ever announced one. So as of this moment, this was the last major content for the game. And apparently the next Assassin's Creed is like this online persistent hub thing. That was a report from Bloomberg, I believe. So we'll see where the series goes from here. But
I already forgot what it's called, like what the project name was.
I'm gonna guess Assassin's Creed Universe. I don't know.
I was thinking like Infinity, but I don't know.
Maybe it was Infinity. Same idea, right?
Yeah.
But
it's gonna turn to Genshin Impact.
Oh, jeez.
You gotta get your SSR Eivor. All right, that out of the way. That is all the games that we've been playing this week, or allowed to talk about this week. And next week, I imagine there'll be a lot of thoughts about Arise, since that'll be out next Friday, before the start of this podcast. So article shoutouts. We have quite a few for article shoutouts. Alex has a double hammer here. He spoke with the developers of the upcoming Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy game, basically inquiring, we're an RPG site. How RPG is this game? So you can go read that. The Sparks notes for this is there are RPG elements, but it's an action adventure first. So maybe not as heavily RPG as some people might want it to be, like us. But there'll still be like skill trees, I suppose, in that game. So yes, there'll be RPG elements, but not so much like an RPG game. So you can go check that out. And then to celebrate Final Fantasy XIII, was it coming to Game Pass? I believe that was.
Yeah, it came to Game Pass with an updated PC port.
Right. So Alex also wrote an article kind of looking back on FF13 and how the older it gets, the more he appreciates it. I still have fond memories of FF13 as well. It definitely had problems, but I still liked it.
Yeah,
So
for those who aren't aware, the Final Fantasy VII Remake team pretty much is the Final Fantasy XIII team. So there is similarities there in terms of who is literally behind the game and making the decisions. And even in like game design philosophy, there's some similarities too. My FF13 take is kind of the standard classic one. I don't really like the guided sections early on, and I don't just mean the maps. I also mean like what parties you can use, what paradigms you can use, how you level up your characters. It's
I remember, like there were like hard level caps on every
Yeah,
single.
it's just so guided early on. I feel like I'm barely even a player. I feel like it might as well have just been like a movie. Um, but I do like the game, like legitimately, when it gets to Pulse. And not just because, when I say gets to Pulse, I don't just mean like the location of Pulse. I just mean at that point in the game literally like unshackles you. It's like, all right, change your party, change your equipment, change your, you can go in any direction. You can try different things. You can take on optional bosses and optional fights and things like that. And it
Yeah,
just like becomes a game at that point to
yeah,
me.
and then you look at the gameplay timer by the time that comes out too. It's like,
It's like,
oh
oh,
wow.
it's 20 hours later. So that's my take. It's a pretty old classic stake, but I do like the game at that point.
Yeah, I was really excited for that game too, like around release because I was one of those people that I went to that GameStop release launch for it because I had a pre-order and I got like the game and then like the super limited edition like strategy guide for it because I like to collect these strategy guides back then for the art. So I was pretty excited. Like it wasn't like amazing but it was decent. I
I
liked it.
imported the game right when it came out, and I actually enjoy it. I love the battle system. I just didn't enjoy the story and how there's a lot of like story reference that aren't explained in the game, and they want you to either read the data logs or buy these novels that are only in Japan exclusive. It's like, where do I even get this stuff?
Hey
Yeah,
man, look, why does this game get flack for that, but Dark Souls gets a pass? What the hell,
So
man?
I'm of two minds of this. I hate games that are overly exposition, where they kind of have to literally just explain everything to you, like a textbook or what have you. And I like it when games, when they talk in universe, where characters who already understand, like, yes, these are the rules of this world, are already aware of it. But there is a balance, and I feel like Final Fantasy 13 does, if you want to understand what's going on, there's not enough context in the game itself to really get that. You kind of have to go into the data log and like read up on it, and that's where it's like, all right, maybe you need a little bit more context or clues around things to have it make sense. You shouldn't require people to be an expert on the world before they even interact with the world. So
Yeah.
yeah, the balance.
And then Paige also wrote a preview for Coromon, the Pokemon-esque monster catching RPG for PC and mobile devices early next year. It looks quite adorable. She seemed to enjoyed her time with it. And yeah, if people are wanting more Pokemon type games, especially ones that like kind of remind them the Game Boy Advance era, like art associated with it, Coromon is looking to be pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that's also Dark Deities from the same place, Freedom Games.
Oh, same publisher.
Yeah, Freedom
Yeah.
Games. I think they're pretty new as an indie publisher. They just sort of appeared earlier this year, and they do a lot of they're an indie publisher, so they kind of latched on to all these independent projects and are publishing them.
Yeah, there's lots of promising stuff coming out of there. Is what I mean. What I'm saying.
All right, we're moving on into the main headlines this week, and heading it is TGS Tokyo Game Show 2021 is coming up. They're back. They had an online only event last year. That'll be the same this year. They had a whole stream like kind of outlining who they'll have and like a preliminary list of like what publishers and companies will show up there and what game some of the games they might show off. And Square Enix has of course is coming to TGS, and they'll have a whole lot of RPGs that we are looking forward to, like Project Triangle Strategy, Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, Guardians of the Galaxy, FF7 The First Soldier, that's the Battle Royale mobile game, and then of course FF14 because Endwalker is coming soon. They also list a Neo the World Ends With You, so maybe we'll hear something about the PC port of that still has yet to release. Bravely Default 2, which is I think that came out on PC this week or
Yeah,
was
it's a
it
couple
next
days ago.
week? Yeah, I forgot. And Outriders. So yeah, TGS. Where are we at on that? It's definitely an event that's well, it's I'm excited to hear more about Project Triangle Strategy to see if they'll have a new name or not, or just Triangle Strategy, and Stranger of Paradise. I really want to see more Stranger of Paradise. I like that demo a lot.
Oh yeah, I guess I had thought that they would say something about Project Triangle Strategy at E3, but they didn't. So I guess maybe this time will be the time.
All right, so what are we predicting for that? Are we predicting a final name for that game, and are we hoping for a release date? It's like when did that demo come out? That first one.
March probably.
Was it March? Was it this year? Really? I felt like that was a last year thing. Maybe it was this year. I don't know how
I really
time
did
works.
feel like it was like a long time ago.
It
It
does.
was like February.
Oh my god. Yeah, that was a pretty interesting like showcase for that because it introduced like some of the characters, how the battle system would work with the HD2D engine because it's a tactics game, and also like kind of like the branching path of it. Like I think, well, it seems weird, but what I really liked about it is like the whole voting system. Like you're trying to get votes on your side to like decide on make an informed decision on how to proceed and whatnot. They had I wonder how big that'll be in the game, like how much of an impact that'll make in the narrative of that game. But yeah, I really hope that we get a finalized name. I really hope it's just Triangle Strategy to just fuck with people. And
Oh yeah, it's like
you know,
taking bets on what the new name is gonna be.
yeah, because when Octopath Traveler was first announced, they announced that as Project Octopath Traveler, I think, right?
Yep.
And they just
Oh, okay.
yeah, they just dropped the project. It's like, yeah, this is the name. So if you just have a game name of just Triangle Strategy, I would really like that.
I think a problem is, or if you want to call it a problem, is that especially for a game that gets enough attention, which if it's a Square Enix game that's like a classic revival, it's going to, right? Then a bunch of websites, a bunch of search results, and everything are already using the earlier name, and you're almost like
Yeah.
handicapping yourself a bit if you change it, because then you're just gonna mess up like your search results and people like trying to find information on the game or what have you. It's just I think that even just some logistics like that, it almost just makes sense. Like let's just keep it, however
I
odd it
wonder if
might
they
be.
care though. That's the thing, right? I wonder if like the ones who are responsible for that and like have the final say. I wonder if they care about like SEO type stuff because like when Sega was deciding between Judge Eyes and Judgment,
Yeah.
like that was like we don't care. Like even though Judge Eyes is like more memorable and distinct, like Judgment is maybe s- sounds cooler for the Western audience.
I don't know.
And then
I would
now
have
it's just
picked Judge Eyes.
man,
Let me see. If I type Judgment into Google, does it?
maybe it'll
Actually,
just like
if I
tailor.
do type Judgment into Google, on the
Mhm.
main page, it does like a drop down, and it does actually say like Judgment video game. Like, is this what you meant?
I
But if
wonder
you
if like if that's tailored to like what you're already like
maybe,
the
but
Google already knows your search result trends.
oh, actually, if I do type Judgment into Google, the main results are like literally just the definition of the actual word judgment, but on the sidebar it actually does bring up the video game. So maybe.
Maybe. I don't know if I buy it. So yeah, I don't know. Has Square Enix announced like a time for? Yeah, they have announced. Their official stream is at October 1st at 1900 Japan time.
There's a bunch
So
of streams on October
yeah,
1st.
yeah.
So like Capcom has a stream. Um, I don't know what we expect from Capcom. There's like a Monster Hunter Rise port. They have a few games in development. I forget what's the space one called again. I forget.
Pragmata,
Yeah.
I think.
Koei Tecmo has a stream where Koei Tecmo they say like they're going to be showing Blue Reflection, one of their what is it Sengoku games or whatever it is, and
Yeah,
they
they're
do have
showing.
they do have a tease where they say like question mark, so they're going to be announcing something.
Yeah, so they like for the Koei Tecmo has two streams. One's on Nobunaga's Ambition and Dynasty Warriors Nine Empires. Yeah, and then the one that you were referring to is Blue Reflection, Second Light, and then they have an unannounced title.
Yeah.
I,
Bandai
I
Namco has a stream, but the stream seems to be focused on Idolmaster, which yeah, that's Bandai Namco, but I was hoping to maybe
yeah,
get Digimon news or something else.
yeah, I don't know about it. Like, I remember E3 Bandai Namco. They only focused like House of Ashes or something, and then
Mhm.
people
Oh
were
yeah.
really let down. So, yeah, I hope Bandai Namco has more than that for TGS, but we'll see. I mean, it would make sense if they only focus on Idolmaster because that's releasing very soon in Japan.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it'll just be the usual grind of like having 10 streams up simultaneously following them, and they're all in Japanese, and they're like, "Well, are they cool? Show you off something cool?" So
Now,
the usual.
before TGS, actually several weeks before TGS, I believe it's just next week, Sony has a stream, a
Oh yeah,
40-minute showcase on PlayStation 5 games. And this is not like a Japanese stream, it's a worldwide stream, so maybe we'll see stuff on Horizon's already got a date, but maybe they'll show Horizon, obviously. There's God of War Ragnarok sitting around, but like people are wondering, okay, Square Enix has a few. They have a couple of PlayStation 5 exclusive games announced, Forspoken and Final Fantasy 16, so maybe one of those will show up.
Did they mention if third parties are going to show up at stream, or they just said nothing at all?
I don't think they've said anything, but it seems like, especially those two Square Enix games, they seem to have, that PlayStation linkage, if you will. So who knows? Maybe they won't show up. I do know they said, or Yoshida, the producer of the game, implied that Final Fantasy 16 won't be at TGS, but this stream is technically not TGS, so maybe they'll show something. Maybe that's just wishful thinking. When is that stream? Let me pull it up here. That is September 9th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. So
Okay. Well, hopefully everyone's hopes and dreams and wishes all come true on that stream. Best of luck. All right. So moving on, they showed off gameplay for the new 2K and Firaxis Games, Marvel's Midnight Suns. You and I have watched a reveal stream, gameplay reveal stream for this. It was pretty cool. They showed off that the gameplay is going to be you can take up to 3 of the Marvel superheroes, including like your own custom character, and you send them into battle, and it's of course like a tactical grid-based RPG. No, I don't think it's grid-based, but it's a tactical turn-based RPG. But the actions are done via like a card battle system.
Yep.
Yeah, like Slay the Spire. So a lot of like, hey, you have this deck of cards, and they might this card might inflict like a certain ailment on this character, and then that ailment maybe another character can capitalize on that ailment or whatnot. They showed off just gameplay of it, like the first gameplay. What did you think, Adam?
I think it looks pretty cool. I am not into Marvel at all. Like, I have not seen any MCU movie, but
Right.
I think it looks like a pretty cool. I like tactical RPGs. It looks like it's not just XCOM with Marvel characters. Although I do know some people who kind of wish it was, because they just like XCOM so much, right? It seems like its own take. It's got like, it does have a little bit of, seems like real time movement, but in a turn based system. Several tactical games kind of have that system where you might be able to move and attack in a turn. You have your 3 characters. You have this card system that will add a little bit of randomness to your strategy. Of course, you can't just, you're at the whim of the cards to some extent in terms of what abilities you have available to you. There's lots of different characters. They announced there's 13 total characters. I think we know of 11 of them, so there's 2 more coming. I do know some people seem to be disappointed that they seem to have remembered that, like, oh yeah, this was always a tactical game. It's not a third-person action game.
Look, people have the third-person action RPG. They have it in 2 flavors. They can have Marvel's Avengers. There's your action RPG. You could also have that Marvel Future Revolution mobile game. That's an action RPG. So,
there's Guardians of the Galaxy is action adventure with some RPG. But yeah,
So,
as a tactical game, this game looks pretty interesting. There's also this character relationship system in the base.
Yeah.
They call it the Abbey, which is I gather this is like a new location. This isn't actually from anything. It's not an adaptation. Yeah, this is like a new base location where you can. It almost felt like Hogwarts or something to me. Where it's like you can do training, or you can hang out with your hero friends. Unfortunately, there is no romance. There is no romance.
But
can't date Iron Man.
There's no romance, but
you can become very, very, very good friends. Is what he said. I think
very close friends. Yeah. So whatever the fuck that means. Hopefully, I can have like Wolverine thinking of me as he's like about to like sleep or something on the bed.
But it does seem to have one of those systems that seem pretty common these days, where you bond with these other characters, and then based on your bond, that might affect how they perform in battle when you're like playing with these 2 characters alongside each other. So we'll see how that turns out.
They didn't do much else because like I still have questions about like deck customization and like kind of the nitty gritty details. So that's obviously there's still some. And this game's not going to be out till March of next year. You're going to say something, Jess? My bad.
Oh, I mean, when I thought about it, I was like, so it's like Social Links, but Marvel, right? You know, like kind of like Scarlet Nexus Bond episodes or like Fire Emblem stuff.
Dude, I saw. I think my biggest wish for this game is I hope that Abbey location is like the Scarlet Nexus base, where like you can just like gift Iron Man all these like little tools, and he'll just be a mess in the Abbey of like his little corner. It's just like that's what I want.
Oh yeah, I feel like that club was like the hideout was like every roommate's nightmare.
Yeah. Now I just wish like that's what I hope for. It's like, oh, I'm gonna like give all these demon puppies to Ghost Rider, and he'll just have like a massive horde of demon puppies in his corner of the Abbey. It's like, what are you doing, dude?
One thing that is kind of interesting from maybe a character or story perspective is that like your player character, he's not really the player character because you sort of play as all of them, but like in the Abbey you have the hunter, which is kind of you is basically the player character, is apparently has been sleeping for hundreds of years, and they actually the other heroes like wake you up for help because you're the one who has a connection to Lilith. Again, I have no idea who Lilith is. I don't know Marvel, but your character is supposed to be like the veteran in a way, in terms of like people revived you to get your help, rather than the other way around where you're sort of like the newbie in these sorts of things.
Yeah.
But
which helps a lot. Like it's like an inverse of that. I always hate being like, "Hey, you're the newbie, so here's how you do everything. Here's the world explanation." So like, I appreciate that they're like your character is integrated like in a very vital way. Like the setup for the hunter is like you're the offspring of Lilith, and Lilith is on a rampage again, and like you're the only one who knows how to basically stop your mom. So essentially,
Oh, actually, I remember that the protagonist is also. I don't think they have a canon appearance. It's like you get to customize them.
yeah, they do.
Yeah, so
you can argue that maybe their canon appearance is how they appear in like the key art, which is like a woman with black hair and like a ponytail, I guess. But seems like you can customize them pretty readily.
Yeah.
Oh
so
yeah.
I do wonder like what kind of like powers you'll be able to get them and how they'll synergize. So it's probably the most interest I've had in a Marvel game. Like in like the Spider-Man games on the PlayStation platforms are cool, but like in terms of like what I really like out of games, like a turn-based RPG with like a card system like Slay the Spire with Marvel superheroes, sounds really enticing, especially because the roster has like Ghost Rider and Blade, like just like and Magic and just heroes you don't really see much in Marvel games these days anymore.
And for our purposes, this Marvel game is the most RPG of them. So it's the one we'll be maybe focused on most because of that.
Yeah.
So
let's see. Oh yeah. Sega has outlined a whole bunch of Lost Judgment DLC and special editions. They shared a DLC roadmap. At launch, you'll have like I don't know all these like item bundles, like the Detective Essentials, and then you'll have more detective dogs,
more girlfriends.
That's right, more girlfriends, additional girlfriends. And a new skateboard and skate park. Let's see what else. And October 26th, I think that is. They'll have a School Stories expansion pack, and then that'll have new motorcycles, new School Stories, obviously.
More robot cars, more boxing, I guess.
Yeah. Like
the launch pack also has more Sega Master System games.
Did they outline what those additional ones were?
The Japanese release did. So Sega Japan like outlined more specifics on these DLCs, where Sega of America was just kind of like broader descriptions of it. So the Master System games are Fantasy Zone 2, Alien Syndrome, SDI. I don't know what that is. And then Darius 2. And I remember that one's interesting because I guess Darius 2 has never been released in Japan before.
Really? So, that's weird.
Yeah, so that was a game that was on the Sega Master System in the West, but not in Japan. So it's like they actually mentioned in the Japanese press release the sequel to Darius will be recorded for the first time in the Japanese version. So,
And
kind
I
of a
think the
silly
most
thing.
the biggest one out of this whole DLC roadmap that I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to is spring of next year. They're gonna have a brand new story, and you'll be able to play as Kaito, Yagami's like partner, essentially. So he'll be a playable character. He'll be the main character in that story expansion. And then they're saying it's approximately 10 hours of additional content. I think the wording was weird on this one because like there's a special edition of this game that's like expensive that for the meantime that's the only way you'll be able to get this new Kaito content, but we assume that this will be sold separately at some point, right?
Yeah, the way they put it is that the Kaito File Story expansion is available in spring 2022 for digital Ultimate Edition pre-orders. That's it. That's what they put it. So it's like you have to pre-order the digital Ultimate Edition to get access to it. I doubt that's the case, but in terms of what they've written down, that's all they've said. So if you buy like a standard edition of the game and you want to get this version later, I'm sure that will be possible. But in terms of pricing and maybe availability, they haven't really said yet.
Yeah, well, I mean
But
that's
yeah,
one way to.
the original I know the original Judgment had some DLC, but it didn't have any sort of like expansion at all, right?
I don't think so. Like, because I remember like the Judgment DLC was just kind of like
Yeah, like
consumable.
drones, right? It was
Yeah, and,
like for the drone races or something. Small
yeah,
stuff.
like small stuff like the mini games, but nothing like there's like no story DLC from what I recall. It's just a
I
whole.
wonder if the game will have like a Final Fantasy 15 syndrome where Kaito will just leave the story at some point. It'd be like, what's going on with Kaito? Find out when you play the expansion.
Yeah, it's they're really adding a lot, especially like the boxing combat style to the streets. So it's kind of like adding like a fourth style, like to take with you, I guess. And weird. Um, so this one was kind of early on in the week. There's a Bloomberg report that was said that Toshihiro Nagoshi, obviously a lot of people know him for the Yakuza series, including Judgment. And then he's apparently in final negotiations to leave Sega for NetEase Games. That's wild. That's crazy.
Yeah, so NetEase is a Chinese developer. They primarily do mobile games, but they have been trying to expand into console games. And this is one of those things I wasn't aware of, at least not intimately, before this announcement. But people have now started looking into it. Obviously, NetEase last summer in June 2020, they announced at least 2 new studios in Japan. So they're Chinese developer in Japan that want to focus on console games. One of them is Sakura Studios. I forget what the other one's name is, and this is an initiative on their part to basically grow out of their. NetEase primarily does mobile stuff, or like browser online stuff, and they want to do like console style games. And obviously, Japan has been doing this for quite a while, and they feel that Nagoshi has proven himself to be, the leader of a major publisher's franchise console style role playing game, and they feel like he would be great to head off this new initiative. So that seems to be what this is all about, is that NetEase is trying to expand, and they're basically trying to hire people they believe can lead this expansion, and they believe Nagoshi is the person to do that.
I don't blame them. Nagoshi is one hell of a creator, just it would be I don't know. It seems very weird. It feels like a big blow to Sega if he just left, because Nagoshi has really created something special with like with the RGG Studios output.
Okay, so I looked it up because I felt that I couldn't remember. So NetEase, they have established Sakura Studio, which is based in Tokyo. And they've also established, I might mispronounce this, it's OUKA, so Uka Studio in Shibuya. So that's actually like 2 studios in Japan, in major cities, that they're established in the same month. So this is probably where Nagoshi would go were he to accept this offer. And presumably they are offering him a lot of money to do this. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah, man. No, man, make that money. So yeah, I mean, he's come a long way. He's had one hell of a journey ever since, like, his early roots as the Super Monkey Ball creator.
Monkey Ball.
Hell yeah! So
Kitty.
if it's true, I mean, best of luck to whatever Nagoshi does in the future. He's definitely proven himself, and it'd be interesting to see where RGG Studio goes from here without Nagoshi. Just recently, like, Nagoshi had like a big promotion at Sega. I forgot the exact position. Then like he kind of stepped down from that, and now he's kind of, hey, we'll see what if he goes to NetEase, what he'll do from there. He'll probably make really great things. Continue to make really great things. So yeah, we'll see how that unfolds and whether it's official or not.
What are some games that NetEase have made, and they're not the type of games that we typically focus on?
I think MMOs. I think.
Oh, I have heard of Onmyoji. That's like a traditional Japanese mobile game. Apparently they did that, or they did at least a Onmyoji game. There might be more than one. Warbound Storm. They have a Marvel game, Marvel Super War, is a NetEase game.
Yeah, I've heard of some of these games, like Myoji for sure. I've heard of Identity V. I think I don't.
Yeah, so
I think
so this is exactly it. They focus on like the sort of these online free to play types of games, which honestly probably, like, I know Onmyoji has actually done really well, even though you don't hear about it too often. Oh, there's a game called Knives Out, unrelated to the movie, and that I know also done pretty well as that sort of style of game. But this is exactly it. They want to expand into more of the console space, the stuff that we happen to focus more on.
Yeah, that's a trend happening in these types of spaces. Like traditionally, like mobile free to play developers want to expand more into console side games. For example, like the Grand Blue developers, like they really want to push into console. They had Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, and then they have Grand Blue Fantasy Relink still incoming. They want to have a bigger presence in that market. So it's just kind of a whole initiative, like, hey, not just console, maybe PC as well, and yeah, just kind of capitalize on that. That there's a way, there's a lot more people in the world than just mobile players, essentially. So interesting to see, interesting times. So next up, we have new Shin Megami Tensei V screenshots showing off Shohei, which is kind of that Devil Summoner looking dude from the recent trailer. Nuwa, which is like the demon in a red dress. Fusion, negotiation skills. It's what you would expect out of a Shin Megami Tensei game.
I think it's kind of funny that now they're introducing like negotiation and fusion, because those are the really common mechanics that every SMT game has. So besides the Digital Devil Saga, but
I mean, negotiation is still influenced by the moon phases. So, like, if it's a full moon, there's some demons you can't talk to because they've got insane by the full moon and whatnot.
There's a screenshot with Mothman. He's like, "I'm looking for the moon. Where's the moon?"
Oh, Mothman! Really good Mothman emoji that we added to our Discord channel.
I don't understand the Mothman meme. Muito real.
Muito real. So cool. I hear the translation. So, yeah. The author show off, what you would expect for a Shin Megami Tensei game in terms of like fusion. You can see like the result of the fusion when you're fusing 2 to 4 demons and whatnot. You can transfer skills freely. I mean,
Sega or Atlas, as well as Nintendo, they're like heavily promoting this game. New trailer info or something.
Yeah.
It feels like every other week at least. And SMT is obviously it's kind of the older brother of Persona, but not as popular as Persona. But because this game has been in development for a while and it seems like it's had a lot of effort put into it, they're maybe hoping that like they can kind of ride, Atlas's now after the release of Persona 5. Like Atlas is a much more household name, maybe. Where
what they're doing? They're doing the Monster Hunter Stories 2 approach.
Oh yeah, like the first Monster Hunter Stories did not sell great, being on 3DS. But after the release of World, Monster Hunter Stories 2, I believe, is in some metric the best-selling Japanese RPG on PC in some metric.
Weird.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it seems like they're going all out for SMT5 in terms of like, hey, this is what we've been working on, and this is cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of Atlas, though, supposedly the first of the Persona 25th anniversary announcements is this month. Maybe TDS feels a little bit late for that because that's literally the last day of September. So maybe we'll hear something in the next week or two.
I don't know. Remember that PlayStation 5 event coming up soon?
Persona 6 is going to be announced. I feel like they wouldn't announce Persona 6 quite yet. I feel like that
feels a bit too early.
I feel
but...
so this Persona 25th anniversary event is taking place over the course of a year, and they say they have like 7 announcements. I have to imagine with the last announcements like literally next summer. I have to imagine Persona 6 is what they're going to kind of lead up to, and at that point, SMT5 will be out. Atlas won't have any major games in development, or that we know of, and then that will be their sort of like reveal at that point.
All right. How about Persona 1 on PS5?
Persona 3 remastered. Yeah. Who knows? Remake.
Straight PS1 port to PS5. That's the announcement next week.
The straight PS1 port.
Please be excited.
Please be. I'm excited. I'm already excited.
Just get it for the soundtrack.
Here we go. Demon Gaze Extra is coming out in North America and Europe on December 9th. This is going to be localized or being brought over by Clouded Leopard Entertainment, which is who is best well known for their partnership with Falcom when it comes to releasing the Chinese releases of the Fails games on PC. And now they're gonna be releasing this like enhanced version of Demon Gaze that was previously Vita exclusive, right?
Yes, I believe that released in Japan like today or right around now.
Okay.
So basically, Demon Gaze is developed by Experience. Experience, if you know them, you know them. They are a dungeon crawler developer in Japan. So they do like the wizardry style, first person, step by step, grid based, party dungeon crawler.
Because I'm looking at our entry, it's a developer's cattle.
Yes, you are correct. Experience made the original game. It was published by Kadokawa originally, and Kadokawa is a developer that have previously gone through NIS America in the past for games like God Wars, for games like I'm forgetting some other Kadokawa games. But Kadokawa more recently has been using Clouded Leopard Entertainment as their localizer, and Clouded Leopard Entertainment is also bringing over Relayer, which is a mecha strategy RPG, also from Kadokawa. So it seems like Kadokawa Games is no longer relying on NAS America, and they might be relying on this Chinese-based company to do these localizations. However, Demon Gaze was originally localized by NAS America. I imagine the localization isn't changing. It seems like they're even keeping the English dub that game got, which is sort of surprising. Sometimes they just drop them, but for rights or what have you. But this redo is made by Cattle Call, and Cattle Call is a Japanese developer that has done a handful of things. They did the Metal Max Xeno.
Wait, was that like the original or Reborn or both?
Both, I think. But speaking of Metal Max Xeno, that's coming out next year by P-Cube. That's weird.
So it feels like a labyrinth of like rights and who is able to do what.
I don't think Metal Max Xeno has been announced for localization, or the second one hasn't been announced for localization yet because that hasn't even come out in Japan yet. It's kind of weird. It's weird when you get these Japanese or Chinese companies that are developing games that don't have a Western like branch. Like obviously, Atlas games are going to come out of Atlas West now. They're called, Bandai Namco, Square Enix, NIS Games, even Idea Factory, and all that. But when you get like game developers like Kadokawa, they just sort of give it to somebody to localize, right? As for the game itself, I think Demon Gaze is all right. It's not my favorite of Experience's games. It's got some weird balancing. But they did mention in the press release for this redo that they actually are addressing that.
Yeah, I'm kind of skimming over it right now. Under they send the press release, and Demon Gaze Extra, various elements have been tweaked, including the addition of high-speed battle function, a retry function, an enhanced autopilot function, and then they're saying it's like, ooh, they're saying that the autopilot function. I'm not sure what the autopilot function does.
That's where you like literally open the map, you click on a spot on the other side of the map, and your character will just move there on his own.
Okay.
Not like a warp, but literally just like path their way there. I will warn people that this is a very anime game. For you can get my meaning. It kind of just has a bunch of bullshit in it. It's just how it is. So
I guess the first like inkling we'll have of like how Clouded Leopard Entertainment does as like a publisher and like localization.
Well, maybe the thing is the localization's been done already. So
yeah, but I'm talking about like the first but our first inkling of like how they fare is not with Demon Gaze Extra, but it's with Relayer instead.
Mm-hmm. This game is apparently getting a physical release in the West. So Clouded Leopard Entertainment at least has the avenues in place to do that.
So this is coming
to actually distribute it physically.
Yeah, this is coming to PS4 and Switch only, no PC release.
Correct. It's actually one of the only Experience games that isn't on PC, not even the original. So.
Okay.
So, let me just say one more thing about the game, because it's one of the things that I think is like legitimately interesting on paper. It's just not executed greatly. What Demon Gaze's gameplay, like, you can call it a gimmick, or you can maybe call it like what it's trying to do novel, is that you have your party of characters that you create. Like it's like an adventuring squad. You create their classes and their races and everything, right? Like a typical dungeon crawler. But you also recruit a demon, and there's like 12 different demons in the game that sort of work alongside your party as sort of a tertiary member, but you don't control them. They kind of act on their own. And different demons do different things. For example, the one that I always remember is Mars, because Mars is a demon who is basically your DPS, your damage dealer. They do these big attacks, these big hits. They do a lot of damage, so they're genuinely useful if they are acting smart and acting like doing the right things, but you don't have control over them. So sometimes they just do stupid stuff like waste time. And I kind of find that interesting, that you kind of have like this tertiary member of your team that kind of just acts on their own, and sometimes they can be really helpful and sometimes not at all. But sometimes you just really need them to do a certain thing and they refuse to do it. It's like, come on, Mars, what are you doing? And there's also like another demon that heals you. So things like that.
It keeps you invested and interested. It keeps you on your toes.
It's like it's like that card system, right? It's just random. You don't know what you're gonna get. Sometimes it'll be very useful, but
right.
But yeah.
In December. Speaking of RNG elements, we have a release date for World Flipper getting worldwide release on September 8th. This was originally released in Japan in November 2019. So it's now finally coming out throughout the world. This is like the pinball action RPG. So yes, you are basically your party members of like I think 3 or 4. They are like the balls that you're flipping around and flinging towards targets. I played this a good chunk when it released in Japan, so I'm kind of looking forward to this release. I wonder if I'll stick with it or not, but this is by Sitail, which is a subsidiary of Cygames, so they have that backing. And this is being published and released by Kakao Games worldwide. So if anyone is looking forward to this is your chance. Give it a try. I'll check it out and see how it goes, and see if they brought any of the quality of life improvements over from the Japanese version to the global release. Let's see what kind of how it'll fare. It's pretty unique as far as the genre goes, it's a gacha game, so be aware.
I just remember there's like a lot of drama with the game when it first started because they nerfed one of the elements as soon as this event came in or something like that.
Yeah, there's basically like the wind element had like a really broken like thing that they could do with some of the weapons that you can upgrade. So they were kind of unstoppable and made like a lot of the content meaningless because you can kind of just use exploit that. So they didn't nerf the characters; they nerfed like a weapon because if they nerfed the characters, it would be violating a law, actually. So there was drama behind that. It kind of it's still going in Japan. I don't know how well it's doing. I assume it's doing well if it's still alive. But that my memory is hazy on that whole situation. So hopefully, obviously, I can't imagine this global release will have that exploit in there. Yeah. So look forward to. I think the most the thing that is most like infuriating about this game is like what do you call those arcade games where like you choose a slot for a ball and then it falls down a certain way depending on like where the pegs are, and then you might get a prize or not. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like those games you find in an arcade, like for like
wait, you mean Pachinko?
not Pachinko, because Pachinko is just like you're just pulling a lever, but like you're physically like putting a ball, like you see like it's like a top-down board, and then like you put a ball into a slot, and then like it'll move like certain ways.
Yeah, like it bounces off the pegs, and you hope it falls in the right slot.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, is that Pachinko? No way.
No, that's not.
Okay, what is it called? I forgot. But the summoning animation in World Flipper, it adopts that style where like a pinball will fall from the sky, and then like there'll be certain pegs that'll dictate its movement, and then along the way there are orbs that are both gold and like rainbow colored, and like if it hits like a gold, it'll be an SR, but if it's two golds, it'll be an SSR. But if it hits like a rainbow orb, it'll be an SSR. So you're like, you can watch this summoning animation, see that pinball thing just miss those things. And it's like, here's your rare, like rarity or R character. It just barely missed this rainbow orb, bitch. And it's like, okay, thanks.
Yeah,
game.
it's such a troll when you play the game.
Yeah. Oh my god, I hate it so much. So
I'm looking up this thing, and apparently it's just called. Some places just call it like the peg game or the ball and peg game. Okay.
Okay, I thought there was a more formal name for that, but yeah, that's how the summoning animation is like. You can skip it if you want, but you want that rush. You want that rush, and then getting pissed at it, for sure. Let's see. We have Pathfinder Kingmaker has surpassed 1 million units worldwide. Congratulations to the team there.
And they just released the sequel to that, Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. So for those who aren't familiar, Pathfinder is a tabletop RPG, and this is basically a computer-based isometric RPG adapting the tabletop to a video game. The first game, Pathfinder Kingmaker, that we just mentioned, it came out 3 years ago, I believe, 2018. And it's a sort of game where it seems like it kind of gained momentum over time, where people who are into these games kind of realized, hey, this is kind of a pretty cool game. It came out really buggy, though. And I know our reviewer, Brian, when he played it, he actually got like a game-breaking bug where he literally had to start over. But he ended up pretty positive on it, and he's currently working on the review for the sequel that just came out. But also, apparently, the sequel is also maybe not as in dire straits as the original, but also pretty buggy. But the thing is, these games are like extremely dense in terms of your character creation. You set so many different things for your characters in terms of like their class, their subclass. I might be getting some of the terms wrong, but like which god they follow, which specialization, and there's just so many different options you can do that inevitably there are going to be some abilities or skills or things that just don't quite work right. It's just so dense. So I actually do know people who are interested in this game, but are like, you know what? I will play it next year when it has a chance to be polished at least a bit. Everything I hear about Pathfinder Kingmaker is that it is great, but also I hear that it's like 3 games in one, like literally a 100-hour game. It almost feels like it has like a story beginning, a story ending, and then the next story ending, and then the third story kind of all in one game. Sort of, kind of like a tabletop campaign. You can sometimes have like sequel campaigns or whatever, and it feels like that. So that's the sort of game it is. But yeah, $1 million for this new studio, which is a Russian-based studio for a computer RPG. That seems pretty darn good. Like that is more successful than Pillars of Eternity from Obsidian, for example, right? And this is just Alcat Studios in Russia. So like, this game has seemed to have done pretty well for itself.
Congrats.
It's one of those games I'm interested in. It's just like, do I have 150 hours to spare? I don't know.
Yeah, who would play a 100-hour RPG?
Yeah, who does that?
I wonder.
Okay,
God.
before we move on, we have the correction to make because Jess is yelling at us in Discord. All right, Jess. What did we get wrong at the past segment? There was a name for that game, the ball and peg game. What was it called, Jess?
Okay, so I was trying to look for the name of the game. I was just like, pegs, ping pong ball, drop, and then I found that the game was named Plinko,
That's
not
right.
Pachinko.
That's right.
Plinko.
Sorry,
Plinko.
we have to issue this correction. We are.
I know certain listeners right now are like just pulling their hair out, like it's Plinko. I cannot believe you got Plinko. It's Plinko. All right.
I mean, like I was on mute, so I was like, wow, it's like they can't hear me, and I was like, oh wait a second. So not completely, everyone.
No, we're not ignoring you. We couldn't hear you. But thank you for the correction, Jess. Plinko. Gotta remember. Pachinko?
Well, at least we know.
I think Pachinko and Plinko are the same thing. In my head, at least.
Well, now I don't know what Pachinko is.
Oh, Pachinko is like slots in Japan, essentially. Story of Seasons, Pioneers of Olive Town launches for PC on September 15th. So about a week and a half from now. This will be the first Story of Seasons coming to PC, right?
No, Friends of Mineral Town. It was really weird, but it ended up releasing for Switch and PC simultaneously.
Oh, right. I forgot that already came out on PC. For some reason, I got that mixed up, and this was coming first before that.
Yeah. So the other news that's related to this is that there's two games. There's Story of Seasons, Pioneers of Olive Town, which that came out for Switch earlier this year, and is now coming out for PC. And then last year there was Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town, so different game. That one came out for Switch and PC simultaneous. That PC port was sort of weird because they kind of announced it pretty late, but it was coming out at the same time. So they just sort of like snuck it in there. But that game is also coming out to PS4 and Xbox later this year. I think October. So Pioneers of Olive Town, I do not play these games, so I don't have firsthand, experience with them. But I've heard a lot of negative things on this game in terms of its content, in terms of how NPCs behave, in terms of these things called makers, which is a gameplay element that apparently are just really tedious, and they've actually adjusted a bit in DLC. It's oddly Xseed Games, literally like best-selling game by some metric. So it's done really well for itself, but it seems like it's not quite what people were hoping for. It's gotten a fair bit of DLC, so maybe it's better now, but I have heard some mixed things on it for sure. And even when we reported on the PC release, PC people are kind of like, they're either saying skip it or maybe it's better now. Yeah, mixed things on it, but it's coming to PC, so you'll be able to check it out.
There's also going to be a limited time free DLC coming to Story of Seasons, Pirates of Olive Town, allowing players to dress like Sakuna from Sakuna Rise and Ruin, and that'll be available both for the Switch and PC versions until March 30th of next year. So, big time window for you.
Sakuna is popular now, I guess.
Yeah,
hey man, figure and everything.
Sheesh. That, speaking of one of Xseed's biggest selling games, Sakuna probably definitely up there.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh yeah. So earlier this week, we finally got we heard word back from the developers of Babylon's Fall. This is the Platinum Games action, maybe an RPG. I don't know if it's an RPG, but it's definitely an action game with Square Enix publishing it. They gave a very, very, very detailed report on their first closed beta, the phase 1 of their closed beta test. Just basically addressing almost every complaint that I guess they heard back from the people who were testing it. I don't know. I don't really know anyone who was in the beta. To be honest, like I have friends of friends that were in the beta. But I don't know anyone personally that like to talk to about this game.
That was
I don't know.
pretty connected to get into that beta.
Yeah, it seems like obviously a lot of people couldn't get past like the terms of service, for example, to like connect.
Because specifically the keyboard didn't work for that. So if you were trying to play the game with only keyboard and mouse, you were shut out of luck, and you literally could not play the.
Yeah, and then the director Saito was like, "Oh yeah, well apparently people want to play this on keyboard, so they said that keyboard controls will be supported from the retail version onwards. So I guess not even in like
Not
other
even
closed
in
beta
beta
test
2 and
phase.
3.
Yeah, so just all right, well I guess. But they've addressed things like the artwork, for example, like the brushwork filter, like it made the visibility bad, and like yeah, okay, we should probably try to aim for visibility on that front, so we'll make adjustments there. And then they're talking about like obviously just the battle system not feeling as fast for people as they want it to be, and like all sorts of things. They go very very into detail about every nook and cranny at any complaints that people had. In one way, it feels refreshing that they're addressing it so like in depth. Like it's like overwhelming to like skim through even, but hope for the best. They have other closed beta test phases incoming. um Phase 2 is like sometime this month, and then phase 3 is around November, I believe is what they were talking about. So we'll see how that game shapes up by release, and hopefully all these beta tests just only help that game be the best that it can be by the time it comes out.
It definitely did have a bit of a disappointing E3 showing, but it seems like they're working their hardest to adjust and address what people want out of that game. So
yeah, that's all we can really hope for, and hopefully it's awesome. PlayStation Now users, finally, it's your time to shine. If you're a PlayStation Now user, you'll be getting a Final Fantasy game every month, starting this month up until January. So starting this month, you'll get Final Fantasy VII, the original PS1 game, not the remake. In October, you'll get Final Fantasy VIII. In November, you'll get Final Fantasy IX. In December, you'll get Final Fantasy X and X-2, the bundle. And in January, to end it all off, you'll get Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age. So, if I think all of those games are already on. Were they on Game Pass for a limited time and they went off, or are they still on Game Pass? I forgot.
I don't know. I don't really pay attention.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think some of them might still be on there. Like I could check right now, like Final Fantasy. Let's see.
Yeah.
So stuff that's still on Game Pass, there is 10-10-2. And okay, Final Fantasy VIII is still on Game Pass, so I think it might be leaving soon. Like when was this added? Yeah, this will probably leave in November because it was added November 11th last year.
Okay. So make the most out of your PlayStation Now subs, and if you really want to play FF games on that, then go for it. Have fun.
Which of those FF games is the best one?
The Pixel remaster that's never coming.
FF8 remastered. Hell yeah.
FF8 is a fun game to break. But if it's actually good, I don't know. I do. It is a legitimately fun game to break. Let's just completely destroy it.
If we're being serious out of like the ones here, I'd say it's a tie between FF9 and FF12 Zodiac Age, personally.
10-2's battle system is underestimated. It's very good.
It's very good.
The best implementation of ATB.
Yeah.
It's great.
They'll never visit again.
Too bad. Well, technically, 7 Remake is ATV. They call it ATV, but it's not really. It's not a classic ATV.
I think that's an article in the making. Go write an article.
Great. Bring back the real ATV.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Alrighty then. So that finishes up all the news for this week that pertains to RPGs. That wraps up the show. That's the end of this Tetracast episode. You can find us at the site rpgsite.net. You can find us on Twitter at rpgsite. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/rpgsite.net. You can visit our YouTube at youtube.com/rpgsite.net. You can find us on your favorite podcast app just by searching Tetracast. And then you can visit our Discord we have a Discord button at the top of our front page on the site if you want to go check it out. Well, I'm sure that Discord's gonna be buzzing about Arise very shortly with the release incoming.
And Lost Judgment, September, just so many games.
Yeah, Lost is gonna be coming in a few weeks now as well. So
I'm also in a different Discord chat that has a bunch of people that are diving into the Pathfinder game and comparing their builds and what they're doing and all that. So if that's the type of RPG you're in, that's a big release this month too. So
yeah, so thank you for joining me, Adam Vitali. Thank you for joining me, James Galizio. Thank you, Jess Reyes. Thank you, Chao Min Wu. I've been your substitute host, Josh Torres, and that's been another episode of the Tetracast.
Bye.